Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Trust Yourself Summit. I'm so excited to have Darlene Lancer here with us today. Darlene is a licensed marriage and family therapist and has counseled individuals and couples all over the world for the past 30 years. And she's authored really a pretty extraordinary amount of books. One in particular that I wanted to highlight is Codependency for Dummies. And Darlene, hi, I'm so excited to have you here and then pick your brain about this world, because it seems like you just have such an amazing line of work around codependency and shame and guilt and narcissism. It kind of goes on and on.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I always like to, educate people and spread the word, help people with recovery.
So I want to start the interview with the static question that I've been opening all the interviews with, which is, how would you describe or explain codependency?
Well, my definition is different from like Melody Beatty or some others, and that is, it's people who, they have trouble accessing their internal cues, and so their thinking and their behavior revolve around another person, a substance, or a process. So that includes people who are addicts, or a process would be like sex addiction, gambling. Substance would include food disorders. So any kind of addiction underneath that is codependency, and that will have a lost self. They have trouble accessing their self because they're so other focused.
And would you say that these substances help them access what they cannot access on their own, or how does addiction come into play?
Well, it starts with feelings of emptiness, and it goes into, I won't go into the whole childhood, but there's damage to the self in childhood. It gets covered over by a devalued self, usually shame, emotional abandonment. So children adapt to their environment in different ways in order to survive, in order to be loved. And so one of the ways to do that and to soothe themselves is to adapt to other people. So let's say, take a person who is, their thinking and behavior revolves around another person. Some people, teenagers go to substances, or video addiction used to be like music 20 years ago. Now it's the gaming and internet and phones. But so they use that to soothe themselves because of the pain, the anxiety, the depression, whatever's going on internally. And others try to do the same thing by pleasing, by to be loved, to adapt to what their parents want, rather than the parents mirroring and filling the child's needs and empathizing with the child. That's a natural process of empathy and mutuality, but when that's missing for various reasons, then children will start trying to be vigilant to read the adult and find out what the adult needs and how to be safe, whether it's to achieve, to please, different ways, depending on the child's personality and the environment. So that's how it gets started. But the more that a codependent does these things, whether it's using drugs or adapting to someone else, the larger the gap is between the real self and the codependent self. So eventually they develop a false self. And this codependent self, whether it's a pleaser or the rebel or the hero in the family, the placater, these different roles that people take on, that becomes their personality. And they get further away from, maybe they always tell jokes to try to distract their parents from fighting, or to make them laugh. in the chaos of the family. So the more that a person does this, you can see that the further they get from their real self. The authenticity becomes a distant memory, maybe when they were a toddler or younger even. Some children don't even get to go through the terrible twos because they're punished.
They don't get to go through the terrible twos because what?
Because they're punished.
They're punished.
Yeah, they just, don't be angry. It's spanked. Punishment. Or neglected. There's a lot of different ways. I go into a lot of detail in my book, Conquering Shame and Codependency, childhood. Well-meaning parents, it's not just people that are overtly abusive. Well-meaning parents shame their children too. So it could be acute and intense, like physical violence, sexual abuse. There's something called the trauma of invisibility. So sometimes children you could ask an adult about their childhood and they'll think it was fine. They went on family vacations and they had everything they needed and everything seemed okay. They went to good schools, but their parents were just, there was like an emotional vacuum. Parents weren't able to access their emotions. And so there was a void there, and children don't get mirrored. So they learn not even to go to their parents. They can't for their for comfort, for their feelings of distress. And if that happens long enough, then a person goes numb. First of all, you have to learn to identify your feelings and your needs by a parent saying, "Oh, you're sad. Oh, you're angry. I can see that." And that was so embarrassing. You were bullied at school. That would feel terrible. So they name the feelings, and then the next step is they give comfort or they give help. So if parents ignore their children or say, "You shouldn't be angry," or "Don't be sad," or "You should be grateful," you have it too good. All kinds of things that parents say, often as well-meaning, or they're just too busy, preoccupied with each other, with work, with other children, with financial stress, war, what's going on, whatever it might be. And so children learn they can't go to their parents, or maybe their parents are addicted and not present. So after a while, children shut down their feelings, and they start to feel ashamed about their feelings. Our feelings are very integral to who we are as a human being. And to become a whole individual, we have to individuate, which means we form an identity with our own individual thoughts and feelings and perceptions and beliefs. And we're able to assert that and distinguish that from what our family believes and thinks, and what our parents want and need. And we become separate.
Sorry. I was hearing was that you were just getting to where shame and codependency are related, and I would love for you to talk more about that.
Yeah, I think they co-emerge out of the same dysfunctional environment, where a parent can't be present, can't mirror their child. Probably they are codependent. If their parent is depressed, the children will become codependent or have a mental illness if they're addicted.
Parent isn't mirroring back how a child is feeling or asking them how they're feeling. Would a child develop shame around feeling what they're feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
Eventually, yeah. They won't, shame isn't identified until maybe you're over a year old. There's different studies that say, some say 3 years old, some say 18 months, some say
Interesting. Shame can start that young.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
aren't showing disgust
Mm.
at changing diapers. An infant wouldn't register that, but a little older, being disgusted at their bowel movement, so that's changing.
Mm. Interesting. I think that's a really important, I'm sorry, I think that's a really great point that babies are forming their relationship to their emotions as babies. Because it's easy to think that as babies, oh, they're just babies. They're not.
Most people don't think of babies as individuals.
Mm.
So they are, and we form our identity in relation to someone else.
We form our identity in relation
Process.
to someone else.
Just like therapy is a process in a reaction with another person.
Mm. Say that part again.
In psychotherapy, the healing is also it forms in a relationship. It's hard to heal on your own. We're meant to be in relation with other people.
That's also another really great point, because part of this summit is that I want to encourage people to seek outside counsel, whether it's a coach or a therapist, because of similar, and you just put it in a really great way, which is we form our identity in relation to somebody else, and potentially we heal our identity in relation with somebody else. Is that accurate to what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to have that mirroring. And also,
interesting.
People have a lot of cognitive distortions. I always say, I have a blog on my website, like codependency is based on a lie. I couldn't decide whether I liked the title based on fake facts better. But
what is that lie?
Because it's formed on beliefs that are the result of faulty parenting, dysfunctional parenting. So children, if a parent is emotionally unavailable, a child will think that they're not loved, that they're doing something wrong. Just like it's pretty common knowledge that children blame their parents' divorce on themselves. They think they could have something they did, or that they could get their parents back together. So similar, if a parent is raging at a child, they think that they're like a terrible child. Some parents actually say that, say really shaming things. But if they're just busy on the phone all the time, which a lot of parents are, they're ignoring their child, and so that's emotional abandonment. So they feel, every child has to feel like they matter to both parents, that each parent wants a relationship with them. And not because they're performing, doing well in school, a soccer star, but for who they are authentically. Not to turn away when they're crying, think that they're bad because they're angry, but they are accepted. And that parent wants to spend time with them, is interested in them, values them. And so it's nice if you have it at least from one parent, but it's still not enough, because it's a trauma that you don't have it from your other parent.
Think more about this internal dialogue, about how it seems as if what you're saying is that if there's a lack of mirroring happening, if there's a lack of attention to how the child is feeling and their reaction and how they're internalizing things, that that could have a child interpret something's my fault here, something's wrong with me here.
That's right.
Accurate to what you're saying. Can you say more about that? And then that's probably in the world of the shame, I imagine.
Well, if you don't feel understood by your parent, start to feel like an outsider in the family. A lot of times it could be sibling abuse too. One sibling gets more attention or is actually abusive, teasing. You know, a lot of times that's not given a lot of attention, but I've had many clients who it seemed like their parents were pretty okay, but they had a sibling that may have been a narcissist or something and was teasing them, abusing them, calling them names, even physically hurting them. And the parents were at fault for not intervening and not protecting that child. I think I'm sorry. What was your question? I'm not sure I answered your question. I'm thinking it's your fault.
Right.
Yeah, a child will think that there's something wrong with me. And often parents will say, you're too selfish, you're spoiled. One client, their father said, you don't have any net worth. I believe that's like, you're not making money, so you're just an expenditure.
That's interesting that you said something like, they don't understand me.
Yeah. So then you start to feel like is something wrong with me.
They don't understand me. There's something wrong with me. And those are very common things that adults say, right? They don't understand me. And so it's almost like those lines are what we bring into our adult life, and they're our inner child speaking as an adult.
Absolutely. Yeah. And those are our triggers, and those are our wounds. I talk about our triggers are our wounds that are often turned to stigma. So I'll give an example from my own experience.
Okay.
I went to
talk a little bit. If you could just talk a little bit.
I went to a fish market, and you have to take a number there, and I did. And there were a couple salespeople, and one stepped up and started serving someone. Well, I had the next number, but instead she started helping someone else. And this other woman started buying up all the fish, the particular fish that I wanted. And I objected. And I said, but I was next. They said, well, we're already helping her. It doesn't matter. And I objected again. And I said, well, wait a minute. And they just wouldn't listen to me. And I really surprised myself. I got livid. I was just really furious. And I just put down what I had already bought and stormed out of the store. And I thought this was just so atypical behavior of me. I couldn't understand like why I just went over the top about this. And I thought about it. And by the way, when the person goes into a rage like I did, it's usually because it's triggering something from your childhood. And what it was it reminded me of the feelings must have been how it felt as a child with a narcissistic mother who it didn't matter what I wanted or said, it was like my way or the highway. So that's typical often with a domineering parent or narcissist. So because even though I felt like I was in the right and nobody was listening, taking me seriously to my complaint, they just didn't even give me the time of day to listen. So it just pushed that button and I just blew up. So that's an opportunity to heal that. You know, the more conscious you are of these things, and you can talk about it. It might bother you, but you might not react the same way. If it's in an intimate relationship, then you could address it assertively and talk about what's happening. If you're in a relationship with a narcissist, which a lot of codependents are with abusers or narcissists or addicts or other mentally ill people that can be difficult, or just people that are abusive. There's special ways to get your needs met and to communicate. So to let them know that, for instance, when you don't listen, ignore my needs or whatever it is, this is the impact it has on me. The loving feelings go away, and then you let them know, how it's going to impact them, because usually abusers are not too interested in your feelings, but only how it impacts them. So I developed scripts and strategies for working with difficult people is in my book on dealing with the narcissist.
Tips and strategies on
How to deal with very difficult, highly defensive people. So the title is dealing with the narcissist, but it actually could apply to someone with a borderline personality disorder, an addict, any kind of abuser.
Wonderful. It's really amazing how many different angles of this that you cover in your work. Can you share, we have time for one more question. Can you share a tip from what you just described, how to communicate with a narcissist or
Okay, well, I have a blog on do's and don'ts in relating with abusers. And most people, the natural inclination is to placate. So you want to calm them down. Someone's angry at you. You want to explain yourself. You want to, when you're being accused or blamed, you want to justify and defend yourself. All these are like the wrong thing to do. What you want to do is set boundaries. You want to confront the abuse. Maybe not when the person is very heated or could escalate, but you can do it afterwards. You can remove yourself. You could just say, stop. I don't want to hear this. And then there's ways to confront it constructively after things have de-escalated. But the more you explain and justify and defend yourself, the more ammunition you give to an abuser, because an abuser is not interested in the facts. They're interested in having power over you. And as soon as you start explaining why you did something, and it's like you want the message is, I want your approval. So when you defend yourself and explain and justify, it's like you're going to a parent, like, please, tell me it's okay. Don't be mad at me. But they're being mad. Their anger is the problem. So it puts your self-esteem in their hands, and that's what they want.
That's an interesting illusion that they're mad at you, and you have to prove to them to not be mad at you, when ultimately their anger potentially is not even about you.
Exactly. So maybe that's the first tip, is like, it was actually called Q-tip. Quit taking it personally.
Great. That's a great one.
Yeah, it's a slogan from
the acronym too.
Yeah, it's a slogan from 12-step meetings.
Okay.
So, and don't think that you're gonna change them. But if you change, the dynamics will change. So if you start calling people out on abuse, and I've had clients like this, and also in my own life, the abuse, in most cases, will diminish.
What was that last part?
In most cases, the abuse will diminish. And then in my book on dealing with the narcissist, I give some guidelines to evaluate whether there's hope for your relationship.
It's a very common question. Is this even workable?
Well, there's some signs to be able to evaluate that. If there's been physical abuse, there's a good chance there'll be physical abuse again. So people stay in violent relationships. Um, Unfortunately, the average is there'll be at least 7 incidents before they leave.
At least 7.
That's the average.
And violence can be non-physical. Is that accurate? And I think for codependence, would you say that it's possible that some codependents have, because I'm a recovering codependent, and I used to have such a threshold for being around anger that I couldn't tell when it crossed the line of like, this is violent anger, not necessarily physical, but emotional rage. I had such a threshold for it, I couldn't tell. So how does that ring for you, or ring for you?
Well, I thought you meant like non-physical violence. I didn't know if you meant physical on the person, because breaking property, slamming doors. A lot of people get their phones or computers broken. That's violent. Breaking walls.
And screaming as just.
Well, that's emotional abuse.
Emotional, yeah. So that's why I'm pointing to the codependent, particularly myself, where I recall not knowing, is this abuse? I can't even tell.
Well, yeah, that's why it's so emotional abuse is so, it's so rampant. It's off the charts and never reported. Actually, you watch abuse on TV, on talk shows and things. People can be abusive, and it's like, okay, considered okay. Our president is abusive to people, and it's not called out. So it's just so accepted that many people, and if they're used to name calling or belittling, or there's so many different kinds of emotional abuse. Oh, you have a cat?
Yeah.
Oh, a
spider.
Oh, pretty. I love cats.
Yeah.
That people, and this was me, many decades ago, are abused and don't know it because it's familiar.
It's familiar.
Emotional abuse is familiar. So you don't recognize it.
Used. You don't.
Same with sexual abuse.
So we're coming to a close now. Do you have anything else you want to add in before we end?
Well, just that people can listen to my interviews and videos on YouTube and clip, that's CLYP.com. I post every day on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and there's links to all of this on my website, whatiscodependency.com. There you can get free 14 tips for letting go. If you'd like to subscribe to my blog, there's a link there. I blog every month. I only do mailings about once a year.
Well, thank you so much, Darlene. Thank you for the work that you do and the many areas of human behavior and relationships that you cover. I so appreciate you being here with us. Again, you can go to whatiscodependency.com to get your free copy of 14 Tips for Letting Go. Thank you, Darlene.
Thank you, Cheryl.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure, and we'll see you all in the next interview. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.